I'm Abdie Kazemipur, President of Canadian Sociological Association, and I would like to welcome all of you to the 2022 Congress of Humanities and Social Sciences, and also this first opening session of the annual conference of the Canadian Sociological Association. Today I will be moderating with great pleasure this opening session with our keynote speaker, Dr. Sari Hanafi. But before introducing Dr. Hanafi, let me mention that while we are meeting here on a virtual platform, we should take a moment to recognize the importance of the land on which we are all located. And from coast to coast to coast, we should acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all Inuit, First Nations, and Métis peoples. This acknowledgement should reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in building positive relationship between nations and in developing deeper understanding of Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Our keynote speaker for this session is Dr. Sari Hanafi, that is most likely well known to many of you. Dr. Hanafi is the current president of the International Sociological Association. He is also the director of the Center for Arab and Middle Eastern Studies, professor of sociology, and chair of Islamic Studies program at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon. Dr. Hanafi is the editor of Idafat, the Arab Journal of Sociology. He has numerous publications. The two more recent ones are two co-authored books, the Oxford Handbook of the Sociology of the Middle East and Knowledge Production in the Arab World, The Impossible Promise. In 2019, Dr. Hanafi was awarded an honorary doctorate by the National University of San Marcos. The title of Dr. Hanafi's talk is Understanding Social Transition Through the Lens of Soft Universalism. Dr. Hanafi will talk for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have another 20 to 30 minutes for question and answer and discussion. You would be able to post your questions using the Q&A feature of this webinar or the chat function, and I will be reading those questions afterward to Dr. Hanafi. Again, this is a great pleasure to host you, Dr. Hanafi, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Abdie Kazemipur. I'm so glad on behalf of the International Sociological Association that I'm invited by a dear association who hosted us just 4 years ago in Toronto, where I was elected. And so thank you for Canadian Sociological Association for all the effort you do for promoting global sociology, I would say. So if you allow me to share my screen, usually in the webinar, I used to use PowerPoint and put so much word just in case I live in Lebanon and the internet not always perfect. Even I am now in my American University of Beirut, supposed to be better than this. Okay, so I'm so interested in Q&A, so I will try to make it quite shorter to able to discuss with you. So let me say quickly that in the course of the humanity, pandemics have induced deep societal changes in all social, economic, and political spheres. The COVID-19 pandemic as a social phenomenon is no exception. So specifically as a political sociologist, I'm interested to see now in this social transitions, something like the spreading of authoritarianism in the global south and populism in many, many countries of global north. And to remind you what Pierre Bourdieu wrote after 1968 student revolution in France, in his book Homo Academicus, that the moment of transition crosses all fields. So, so this is where I'm expecting, I am hoping today that we need to reflect how this moment of transition can bring more forces to reach, if you like, to impact all fields, le champ, and actually progress toward, if you like, the social justice and all and human rights values and things which is dear to all sociologies. So if you like, my main question today, how to understand these transitions through the lens of universalism. Of course, I am aware that many people don't like this word, has a legacy of related with imperialism, with colonialism, but bear with me to justify my claim. So I will bring specifically question of liberalism and specifically egalitarian liberalism of Jean Rawls. So can this liberalism be soft universalism? So I will introduce this concept, how we reconcile the local and the universal, and in fact, I cannot talk about soft universalism without arguing that how we will how we conduct our research and produce what is also dear to me, the concept of global sociology. Not only to me, to many of my president of ISA colleagues, Michael Barawi, Michel Viviorca, Margaret Abraham, and so on. So, sorry. So, if you like, first of all, I want to disentangle a global sociology from the internationalization process, if you like, because the internationalization is not sufficient to ensure a global sociology, and I will give you a precise example. I will try today to really bring some example to this abstract theme. So, so again, when we should acknowledge the major work of post-colonial and including the colonial approach to think the global sociology and to be suspicious about what can be labeled as the global sociology. But I will show you what my conceptualization is a little bit different from what these approaches try to argue. So for me, to have a global sociology is to have three conditions. First, declaration of the positionality of the author. It means that there is no global sociology without the biography of the author, where the fieldwork has been operated, and so on. So I can write myself a global sociology from the positionality of a Palestinian who lived in Syria and Lebanon, more than to claim a kind of one global sociology. The second condition is the comparatism. And this is, of course, we all know Orlik Beck and how he insisted not to fill into the methodological nationalism, that we need really to have to do always comparison between different nation state, different countries, and of course a comparison should not be light, comparing simple events, nor heavy that risk entrenching the analysis within solidified categories. So we should need to have a middle way of doing the comparative. The third condition is a soft universalism, and this is where I will spill out in this talk today. So simply in a very descriptive way, I would say how we produce knowledge that combine the global, transnational, general with the national, local, and particular. My experience, and Dr. Kazemipur kindly mentioned that I am the editor of the Arab Journal of Sociology for more than 12 years. And it's my experience is often when authors start from the particular, it's very difficult to go up to the global. So this is why I prefer always to think our social phenomenon in a global way and then going to local. So first of all, as I mentioned, I wanted to show you that in fact internationalization doesn't lead often to global sociology. Just I will give you an example from the French academia. As myself, I am French also, and I've been interested in French academia for a long time. So if you compare Revue Française de Sociologie to American Sociological Review, Social Science Japan Journal based on Japan, a New Perspective on Turkey, you see, if you see who, where the institutional affiliation of the lead authors of articles, you find in France that 100% are based on France. So it means that they produce global but a very local way. And if you compare it to US, it's 86.6%, while the half of the article in Japanese journal are produced by people based on Japan, and 76% based on Turkey. So you see there is an internationalization outside, and you don't have this kind of internationalization in France. Even if they claim that they produce somehow a concept for everyone. So how I deduct that they produce concept and sociology for everyone, that I look to the title of their knowledge production, and I found often you don't have geographical marker in the articles. So again, all this is based on sample. So you see that in France, 75% of the article without any geographical marker, compared to almost 70 for United States, 15% only in Japan, and 21% in Turkey. So usually in Turkey and Japan, they acknowledge there is a positionality. They say we produce knowledge based on our research in China, in Turkey, in Middle East, etc. And if you like, I verify this through different lens, and it was clear that, for instance, this is sweeping generalization only when you have a specific case like la réception américaine the frame analysis de Goffman. You find, for instance, they mention the marker. I look to the 11 most cited article in Sociology de Travail, another journal in French, and you have the same problem. So I look to books, you have almost the same problem, and so on. So doing a global sociology, claiming something that is can be used for the humanity means there is a way of writing, there is a way of conceptualization, there is a way of positioning. So here I am interested to focus on this condition of what I call soft universalism. So if you like, let me define what is this soft universalism. So descriptively, simply, I can say that first of all, I don't talk about universal discipline. I talk about universal concept, softly universal concept. So these concepts are powerful that explain human conditions and action. Normatively, all cultures have some values in common, even if they are buried under layers of different behavior patterns and system of belief. So, beyond this commonality, there is a different agenda of applying this universal value. So universal value can be applied in different ways through different agenda. And of course, cannot somebody say in the name of equality between men and women that unveiling Muslim woman is a universal value. So we should be careful about how thick and thin, and I will come to the thickness and thinness of concept. But just to say, this is a fewer universal moral truths existing. So it's not much seeking common ground beneath the variety of opinion and mores. Other features also is to remember that part of the set of rights is the right to culture. This is why, compared to, if you like, Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, the Human Rights Council in UN it has been a big conference in Vienna, and they issue the Vienna Declaration state. So if you read carefully, you see, for instance, while the significance of national and regional particularities and various historical culture and religious backgrounds must be borne in mind, it is a duty of a state, regardless of their political, economic, and cultural system, to promote and protect all human rights and fundamental freedoms. It means that we will not end up all humanity have the same values, but at least we want the Vienna Declaration insist in the duty of the state to promote and to protect this pluralism. Okay, so if the society is not ready to institutionalize the gay marriage, at least to protect and to promote the right of pluralism and different sexual orientation. So and again, so soft universalism is a way of thinking processes of cultural mediation of human rights. And here I would like to highlight what Abdie al-Naim, American Sudanian scholar, who wrote that this process involved the risk of having to accept a prioritization and reprioritization of social values that one believes to be contrary to universal human rights values. So here where the setting agenda, so that the agenda is really should be national, while we talk about Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So so value more universal, and the agenda is more local. And I should remind you the amazing work of Michael Walzer in his book Thick and Thin, Moral Argument at Home and Abroad, where he argued that the thin and the thin moral terms are very important to think to these moral terms not equally, because the thin set of universal principles should be adopted or elaborated thickly to historical circumstances in order to give sense to what do we mean of specific principles, like social democracy, for instance, in a given context where other thick principles, for instance, distributive justice, are into play. And in this meaning, these thick moral arguments often are more legitimate and useful ones. So the minimal thin morality is very important, both for the sake of criticism and for the sake of international solidarity. So we cannot we cannot, in the same of these historical circumstances, not to think this thin morality. Also, I can evoke the work of Fred Holliday about analytical universalism and historical particularism. And I found his book, Islam and the Myth of Confrontation, is a wonderful in this regard, as he argued that historical particularity of a region and the applicability of social science theory, it means that general analytical and theoretical categories independent of specific data and situation. This is what the meaning of theory, while retaining an ontologically reflexive self-awarenesses required to avoid the inadvertent reification of historical relationships of domination between the West and the Orient. And you may know this is my criticism of some features of post-colonial discourse. So I'm not against post-colonial theory, but post-colonial discourse in my region, in the Arab region, but I can argue in other regions, often reify or sharpen dichotomy between East and West. And this is, for me, is not useful. So in a nutshell, about the features of soft universalism, this universalism is soft, yet not soft on relativism, because we don't want to enter into mythology of uniqueness. And in my work, epistemological work, I did a lot of work how the Israeli sociology fell into mythology of uniqueness, but also the Palestinian one, and some of the Arab sociologies also fell into this. Now I will move to last point before the example, where I will talk about the three conditions for a concept to be softly universal. The first one is, and it become now obvious from what I said before, it should be the outcome of the quasi-cross-cultural consensus. It means it's not only because a concept is emerged in Euro-American context that it become universal. So we wanted to be sure that it was sufficiently discussion beyond that. And for me, really, something I study it carefully is how the Universal Declaration of Human Rights emerged. This is why the label Universal Declaration deserved it, because it was a quasi-cross-cultural consensus. So the second condition is not a teleological concept, but a historical experience that gets its normativity as a result of a collective historical learning process. It means that if we say today that democracy, liberal democracy, is a universal, is because we see the dividend, the benefit of this this political regime worldwide. We see it in Latin America, in Europe, where it emerged, in China in the past, not the whole China, but if you like some part, in the Arab world recently, and so on. So this is how it got its normativity. So human knowledge and endeavor are fallible, not uneternal, unchangeable truths. So maybe the humanity will invent a better political regime in the future, but so far liberal democracy seems to be a universal concept. So no idea of the best time nor moral progress. So it can be ups and downs. The third condition is universality as an imaginary, not a stringent model to be exported. Again, if I continue in my example of liberal democracy, I would say if the liberal democracy is universal, we don't want the American or the Canadian to write the constitution for Iraq, nor the Russian to do it for Syria. So, it's not a model you imported. So again, I can understand philosophical theory like state of nature as imaginary, much more than really in a literal meaning. So, and here I will elaborate in the example I will bring now. So if you like, I decided to take a quite controversial example because some of my dear colleagues leftists in sociology, they don't like political liberalism and liberalism, but for me, it's still, I argue that it's softly universal. So if you like, again, I don't have time to elaborate in this conception of liberalism, but I will take today the example of the work of Jean Rawls, especially his work in comprehensive liberalism and later on to political liberalism, and which I don't think is not. It has some element of the comprehensive liberalism. So you know what is liberalism in a nutshell? It's about the equality of all human beings, about the individual autonomy, about the freedom, about things like that. So I think what is important in Rawls' work that in the early 90s he wrote his major work on political liberalism, and before theory of justice, where he became very famous and separating, if you like, the conception of goods from the conception of justice. And he did something procedural in political liberalism, that how we procedurally we can reach stability and in our society. So if you like, why I said this is softly can understood his enterprise, because we are not obliged to take literally everything he wrote, because the veil of ignorance or the original position can be really controversial philosophically, but we can think about them thinly. It means that a human capability, for instance, of putting oneself beyond one's immediate situation and one's immediate interest. Again, how would we separate public reason from other reasons? So here also I think the way he argued about the public reason and how you translate religious, philosophical, comprehensive, doctrinal argument of morality into something we will call it public reason, so I think this is again softly universal concept. although I acknowledge that the boundaries between public and private is blurring. So it's not easy. It's not universal, if you like. And this should be worked in taking into account historical particularism and things like that. I think again, I am elaborating a little bit what I see softly universal in this political liberalism is his idea of accommodating reasonable pluralism of different comprehensive doctrines. And of course, I'm talking to Canadian audience where the idea of accommodation, child style work, the multiculturalism resonates so much in Canadian context. And I think we, personally, I learned so much from many theorists, Canadian one, including Will Kimlicka and others. So I think his masterpiece in political liberalism is overlapping consensus. Overlapping consensus because I live in the Arab countries where the polarization of elite formation between those who said that those who are support movement, they live in 6th century, while and we cannot live together. And some of the Islamists would say, yeah, those who are the leftists, they come with a foreign agenda. They are not genuine, have interest in promoting their society interests. So I think Jean Rawls, amazingly, with his concept of overlapping consensus, show that beyond this comprehensive religious, philosophical, comprehensive doctrine, people can reach overlapping consensus. And my work about Tunisia, how they reach some overlapping consensus about gender equality for the inheritance law, show this. So if you like, again, no need to adopt fully Jean Rawls in his overlapping consensus. Should understand it as how society produces common language, common procedures, even fighting so much and having Holocaust in Second World War, and nevertheless, the humanity reached the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 4 years after the end of the Second World War. It's amazing. So we should not underestimate the importance of the common procedure. So again, for me, if you like, what is softly universal, not necessarily the liberalism with ism, with like a doctrine, but at least liberal ideals project. And of course, this liberal ideals project should is softly universal because it's sufficiently reflexive to get the critiques from Hayek, from Marx, from the communitarian scholars, McIntyre, Sandel, from racial theorists and feminist approach. And of course, the universality of this liberal ideal project make this project is a target, if you like, the objective of our social production, sociological, knowledge production of Habermas, of the philosopher, the Irish one, Maeve Cox, of the French philosopher Cécile Laborde. And they work this liberal ideal project in a fantastic way. So what I'm trying to say, the issue is not now whether universal concepts are applicable to global south or not, as often I hear it from post-colonial discourse. some discourse, and not any post-colonial scholar. So how to conceptualize liberal ideals project? I will go into two case studies, and these two case studies, one from Global South and one from Global North. So I will take the case of Shireen Abu Aql, the martyr, the Palestinian journalist, and the French laicity. So let me go by the case of Shireen Abu Aql. So Shireen Abu Aql is a journalist, died, you most probably heard last week. It was killed deliberately by an Israeli army, one of the Israeli army occupier forces in Jenin area in West Bank. She is a Christian Palestinian journalist from Jazeera, very famous. Her word was so strong, sometimes emotional, what is going on West Bank and Gaza against Israeli colonial project there. So what is very interesting is that in this total condemnation and sympathy toward Shireen Abu Aql, suddenly some very radical Islamist voices argue, often Salafi, for those who are familiar with the different strands of Islamic discourse. They said that we cannot wish her, may Almighty Allah have mercy on her, simply because she is Christian. So, so I think what, if you like, my understanding of liberal, of political liberalism, that in fact, while we now the discussion in the Arab world look to these people that we cannot live with them, they are so sectarian, they are anti-citizenship. I will argue with all my anger against these voices, with all my anger against those who said that we cannot wish her a mercy, God mercy, that I would say, wait a minute. I think I found almost a total consensus in the Arab world that with sympathy and with anger against the killer of Shireen Abu Aql. What is really what they did? These voices, these radical voices, that they say, look, we think that she is very important for the justice conception of our society. We need a territory without Israeli occupation. So it's a so they agree on the principle of justice, but they said our conception of good life, we will distinguish between what is Muslim and what is Christian, and they are not. We should not wish the mercy, God mercy for the Christian. Actually, this is a very risky when you start thinking like that. That whether you will install discrimination against a minority, a Christian minority in your country. So I am not at all minimizing this, but just to say that, in fact, all this discourse where you say we cannot live together is, I think, they don't understand how overlapping consensus can emerge, at least about the conception of justice. So, so in spite of this ethical mediocrity of those of this radical Muslim, I think we have a kind of conception of justice which prevail, if you like, and keeping theological conception of good life aside. I should mention that Al-Azhar, which is a very important institution, many Muslim scholars, Hamas as a Islamic movement, very influential in West Bank and Gaza, they all they wish her a God mercy. So if you like, it's really radical voices and not the mainstream Islamic voices who who did this. Now, finally, and I will finish here by raising another examples how this liberal project, liberal ideal project, is very important to think about it as a softly universal, is to think today the French secularism, whether it is universal or not. And I think the problem of the new laïcité in France. So I'm not criticizing the historical laïcité, which was absolutely important. I am not. I'm a secular sociologist, and I take it seriously. But because I take it seriously, I don't want it to be discriminatory against other religion. So I think let's put it clearly that what is softly universal is a liberal ideals and not the secularism. Secularism is a mechanism. It's a mechanism to reach freedom, all the freedom of expression, freedom of religion, of worship, freedom of conscience, and things like that. So this is what is universal. Secularism is simply a mechanism. Unfortunately, in France, it become for me a Christian conception of secularism. They want to force all other non-Christian religion to be like a Christian religion, reformed in a Protestant way. Again, I just refer to work of Charles Taylor and Talal Asad about this, but I think the question of woman veils is outrageous in France, where even it was part of the campaign of Marine Le Pen that it will ban it in the public spheres. So their conception of the way a Muslim woman dress that is not compatible with privatizing the religion in a Christian way. It means put it privately at home or at the church. And I think this has become an ideology. You find it among scholars, among politicians. Macron's speech targeting members of Muslim community who refuse to be assimilated. I should praise how the Muslim in France, they are really very well integrated, but this stigma, of course, to revivify the national identity is very problematic. What is currently is done is almost 550 mosque was closed by bureaucratical decision of the Ministry of the Interior. Sometimes just because they recite Quranic verses seen as against gender equality in the Friday sermons, prone to close the mosque. So if you like, again, this mixing, why Jean Rawls is very important, because this is conception of goods. And this is, there is a way of struggling against conception of goods. The state is not to interfere of different conception of goods. And I think I don't, I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Hanafi, for this great talk. Actually, I should mention that that hand signal of mine was a secret code between Dr. Hanafi and myself, that there is 5 minutes left. So he was not asking a question in the middle of the talk. So we have some time, about 15 minutes, 16 minutes for question and answer and discussion. Please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A area and function, and I and Dr. Hanafi can read those questions from there. But while people are formulating their questions, let me start with asking a question myself, Dr. Hanafi. You talk about, and first of all, there are a lot of very interesting ideas to explore further in your talk. You mentioned this idea of universality, and you mentioned that in regards to some values and ideals, but also you mentioned some concepts. So I was wondering, for me, the distinction between these two is important because I can immediately reject the universality of the values, but I would like to maintain some degree of universality of concepts in the sense of the usefulness of being open to these universal concepts, not necessarily as final concepts, but as point of conceptual departure, so that we can modify them later on in the light of local and contextual information. Any thoughts on this distinction between the universality of values versus the universality of concepts?
Well, I, if you like, in my length paper, I said universality is very important about values and concept. If you like, I see, I grow up as a Palestinians in Syria, an authoritarian state, where I hear in the region that we are exceptional. In the name of our culture, we are exceptional. Democracy doesn't apply to us. Liberal democracy, of course, and things like that. So this is why, for me, I don't want every time as a sociologist, as an activist, to reinvent the wheel. That we need to start thinking with the whole humanity, with some concept that from which I start analyzing my society. It's a lens with which I see the society. And so this is, if you like, where I insist that soft universalism is really very important in terms of values and in terms of concept. I think social classes as a concept is very important. It's in a countries where suddenly people think that the culture is everything, and reviving national identities against minorities, against the other. Sometimes it's really, I don't want to call it a false ideology, but it's very important to see how the economy, the economic, the social, and the political sphere they work together. So this is why if you like, my call for soft universalism, Abdi, is to say, look, I mean, this song that decolonial sociology means that I don't take any more from Durkheim because he is a French, or because he didn't acknowledge Algeria as a colonial as a colony of France. He didn't talk about the so we cannot work like this. I cannot bring Ibn Khaldun to think today the contemporary phenomenon. This is because I said I can understand the Arab world by using the Arab theorists. This melody, I think, is very dangerous, and all my reaction is against this melody, if you like.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We have a question from Dr. Rimovics on the Q&A part. She first thanks you for a great talk, and the question is, have you given this talk or a version of it in France and in French? And I'm curious, if so, I'm curious about the reception to it.
Well, a kind of a version of my thought today about internationalization of a French academia or social science. It is published as interview, long interview in Sociologos, is a journal supervised by French Sociological Association. So I am so glad that they give me a kind of a platform to express my position. Let me put it clearly that the French academia is so divided. It's not divided. The division is, we know, in many places, but it's so polarized. A country where some sociologists can write a petition in the newspaper against other sociologists. I mean, it's really weird the way of and allying themselves with the power against the other group and call the other left-to-gauchist and things like that. So I think we should have the courage to keep this debate in a serene way and looking to the communality with different and the difference instead of just polarizing things. So far I would say yeah, of course there is people they don't like at all what I write, but I think I can live with. I mean, this is we are influential if people don't like some of what we do.
And related to this, you mentioned something in your paper about some of the challenges that you had faced trying to publish this in France, right? Do you want to share that with us as well?
Sorry?
You mentioned something in the paper about when you were trying to publish this in France and many journals did not like it and just...
Yes. This is a... Thank you, Abdie, to remind me this, because this is really was important. I published in Open Democracy when President Macron tried to start setting the stage for against the Islamic separatism law, which passed, unfortunately, which is absolutely a racist law. I mean, I put it clearly. So I published it very easy in English, but when I wanted to publish in French, I use even I try to publish in the newspaper. It was no way, even with some leverage and connection. They said, and they put it privately that it's really not. It's impossible. And then what is very interesting, I heard that Khofar, my dear friend Farhad, they publish him and then remove his piece online. So really, and then as a sociologist of knowledge production, I went very quickly. I make a sample of 3 weeks, and I looked to the 3 main journals, Le Monde, Libération, Figaro, to see who are those who are Muslim origin who write in this main national newspaper. And of course, it was a very few. I mean, only 3 among something like 200 articles. And again, this facade of a French academia that we don't distinguish. We are secular. We don't look to the whether you are Muslim, Christian origin, but in fact, in fact, yes, they care. And what was very interesting when I published a small piece in one news online website in French, they told me, and by the way, the paper was edited by really a friend who was very eloquently French, if you like, because sometimes, of course, it said, look, I mean, you come from Lebanon, your French is not published. No, actually. And what was the first reaction was that why you don't write us about the Lebanese reaction to French president's speech. It means that they confine me to a national place, while I know, and I work in a French research center in Cairo, and I know many of these French scholars. They come for 1 month in Egypt and they write books and articles. So why they can claim this global writing global sociology and not me? So it is really I am very sensitive on that, without really populism, without saying, look, I mean, this colonial heritage of the French, etc. I mean, I'm trying really to bring this colonial argument when it is has a due meaning, and not to put it in all the sauce and all the cuisine. I see sometimes really is quite pathological.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hanafi. We have another question that I'm looking at time might be our last question for this session. The question is, thanks for this inspiring and thought-provoking talk. I wonder, what do you think are the causes and driving forces of the recent trend of cultural particularism and cultural essentialism?
Sorry, I don't see I don't see the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Yes, it says, what are the causes and driving forces of the recent trend of cultural particularism and cultural essentialism?
Well, the situation is, I think, we sociologists, we are in a big trouble today, globally, that the discourse of national identity in pathological way is emerging everywhere. It's the currency for Macron and Marie Le Pen, for instance, in their political campaign. We saw in many northern countries. I see that we just finished an election here in Lebanon, where also this very sectarian way of thinking that we Muslim are different from Maronite, we Maronite is different from Shia, and so on. So I think what you call this identity politics, if you like, this essentialization of identity is very problematic. And I think we need to join all the forces we sociologists, to struggle against the identity politics. So we acknowledge particularity, historical particularity, the cultural particularity, the context particularity, but always by having this conversation and back and forth between what is softly universal and what is culturally very relativist. I think simply the populism that we witness today is really is based on identity politics, and this is why you in the global north and me in the global south, and somebody like Abdie, both in the global north and the global south. So he has, I forgot to say that I'm enjoying reading his last book, really, and we have a lot of conversation together, Abdie. So we need to have more, maybe in person meeting, either in Lebanon or in Canada or elsewhere. But so we have a lot of things to do to struggle against this identity politics that is emerging, if you like. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanafi. Unfortunately, this is the most difficult part of the job of the moderator, to bring a lively discussion to an end. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, we have only 1 hour for this session. So I'm hoping that you would be open to future invitations so that we can continue this conversation in sociology.
Abdi, one word to say, I hope to see you all in Melbourne in June 2023 in our Congress of International Sociological Association, and specifically you, Abdi, but for everyone.
Thank you. We are encouraging our colleagues to try to attend that conference. It is a great opportunity to have a conversation with colleagues from all over the world. So definitely. So again, it was a great pleasure to have you, Dr. Hanafi, here. And there are a lot more questions, and I know that there are a lot of colleagues and participants that have ideas on the themes that were discussed here, so that hopefully there will be potential for other sessions like this in the future. I just want to thank you for taking time. I know it is evening time in Beirut, so thank you so much. And I don't know how you had all this energy at the end of the day. And it was an election day as well. So I want to encourage all the participants to come to our next session. The next session in about 10-15 minutes is designed to just announce the recipients of the various awards that we have at Canadian Sociological Association. So please be there to celebrate the recognition of our colleagues. And thank you again for attending this session. Thank you, Sari, again.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ciao, ciao everyone.